I got nightmares in my head, I fear thoughts build up until I can't hear. That my mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear that the thoughts build up until I can't hear. That my mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper.
Hey guys, welcome to True Crime Rocket Science Live. How long has it been since we've been together? It's been certainly quite a while. I think did I cover Karen Reed once or twice? Well, this is certainly we're back for day 26. Here is Timmy. Just can't quite see him, but he is here. Good to see you guys. We're going to jump right into today's testimony, and then when they go to the break, we'll go to the morning session. So good to see you guys. GLC, Mel Stiller, Plant Lady, Pauline. Good to see you guys. Are you guys ready? Shall we get going?
Okay.
Can you hear him snore?
Yeah, step right up and step for me. Stand and face the front.
You just raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you shall give to the court and the jury in the matter now pending shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Okay. Do you solemnly affirm that the testimony you shall give to the court in the matter now in hearing shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Whenever you're ready, Mr. Lally.
Not a great start,
Good
was it?
afternoon. And if it's at all helpful, that microphone before you is adjustable. You can put it in any direction you wish. Just try to keep your voice up. Okay, sir? Thank you.
Guys,
Now,
is the
sir,
sound
please,
okay?
State your name and spell your last name for the jury.
Yes, it's Ian Whiffin. So IANWHIFFIN.
And what is it that you do for work, sir?
I'm currently the decoding product manager at Cellbrite.
And what is Cellbrite?
Cellbrite is one of the world leaders in mobile forensics software.
Isn't it Celebrite?
And when you say forensic software, can you explain to the jury a little bit about sort of what is forensic software and how is it used, specifically your Cellbrite?
Yeah, so forensic software is used to gain access to people's devices, cell phones primarily, to extract that data and to allow examiners to parse and decode that data to make sense of it in a more user-friendly way so that a report can be created for investigators.
Now, sir, if I could ask you just a few questions going back to some of your educational and prior work experience starting sort of with your undergraduate work, what, if any, where did you go to school and what, if any, degree did you receive?
Okay, I didn't get a degree. I'm originally from the UK, where I did qualifications in computing, a higher national certificate in computing, and then joined the police in 2004.
And what department was that, sir?
That was response work. So South Yorkshire Police as a response officer.
And where did you go from there?
In 2009, I immigrated to Canada, where I was able to continue policing with the Calgary Police Service, where I spent approximately 4 or 5 years, again, working patrol before moving to the digital forensics team of Calgary Police.
And with respect to moving to that digital forensics team, what, if any, specialized training did you receive in regard to that area?
So once I had made it into the digital forensics, I was sent to Ottawa for 3 weeks to do a foundational computer forensics course, covering all manner of digital forensics to begin with. Throughout my 8 years with Calgary Police, I did constant courses each year to keep information updated, including a 2-week course, again, at the Canadian Police College in Ottawa, specifically about cell phone forensics. And then also during that time, additional courses for extracting data for interpreting internet artifacts or any other kind of information found on a phone or computer.
And following that, where did you go from there?
In 2020, I left Calgary Police Service and began working at Cellbrite as the senior digital intelligence expert, where I would use my knowledge of the forensic community to assist the developers with.
Oh, so that's quite interesting. He was in the Yorkshire Police, did he say? And then he was in Canada, and then he basically transitioned from law enforcement into Cellbrite. So he's actually I think an in-house dude at Cellbrite, no longer directly affiliated with law enforcement. Quite interesting. Probably liaises with law enforcement, but let's hear what he says.
Creating and maintaining a program that examiners would want to use. And finally, about 2 years ago, I moved to the decoding product manager position.
At Cellbrite.
Can you explain to?
That's interesting. He pronounces it Cellbrite. Is that actually the correct pronunciation? You'd imagine if he works there that he would know what the correct pronunciation is. Haven't we all been pronouncing it Cellbrite? I mean, it is C-E-L-L-E.
To the jury, sort of what it is, what your role is, and what is it that you do for Cellbrite?
Yep, so right now in the position I'm in, again, I use my knowledge of the digital forensics landscape in the community. I talk with users about their daily challenges, what applications are causing them problems, what they need to get access to, what they need to understand. And I take that information, create a priority list, and then determine with our developers what we will tackle, how we will tackle it, and how it will appear to the end user.
Now, with regard to your education in this area, what, if any, certifications do you have?
No specific certifications. I've done the Cellbrite coursework since joining Cellbrite, but other than the 3-week course in Ottawa, and then again the 2-week course in Ottawa, I don't have the SANS training or any of that kind of training certifications.
I'm not sure what the SANS training is, but it sounds like that's important. He's probably going to be questioned and emphasized on that by the defense, right?
And in addition to your work with Cellbrite, what, if any, other areas of the field have you worked in?
I'm sorry, could you rephrase that?
Sure. Have you given any presentations? Have you published any work in relation to this area?
Yes.
Now, remember 24 trial days ago when I covered this, the prosecutor sounded a little soft. 24 days later, he still does.
So since working as an examiner, I identified that there were times that I needed to parse artifacts from applications that the main vendors didn't support. In response to that, I would do my own research. That research turned into a selection of digital forensics tools, and I created a website for myself to share that research, to share those tools with the community. And directly related to that, I have published articles related to accessing data on phones, related to SQL databases, related to various other artifacts, primarily locations.
Now, over the course of your work, have you had occasion to testify in other courts in relation to this specific field?
Yes, related to digital forensics, I've testified approximately 20 times, mainly in Canada, but also once in Michigan, once in Australia, once in the UK.
Oh.
Now, as far as
Australia.
Questions that come into your company with relation to interpretation of data, other sort of general forensic questions. What parts of the world do these questions come in from, and how widely used is your product?
So the product is used globally. There are a select number of countries that we don't export to, but generally, if a police service is interested in digital forensics, then they're using at least some of our tools. We operate an email address which is open to any user called Stumpers. And the idea is that users, if they come across an artifact that they can't explain, they can email to myself and some of my colleagues, and we can research that artifact, and we can try and give them an answer as to say why the artifact's there and how it should be interpreted.
You used the term in there as far as an artifact. If you could please explain to the jury sort of what your understanding of that term is and how it's used within your specific industry.
Yeah, so I would refer to an artifact as essentially any piece of data which I've recovered from the phone, which is of interest. It could be a web history visit. It could be a text message. It could be a photograph, any piece of information.
Now, sir, turning your attention to September of 2023, at some point in that month, were you contacted by the Norfolk District Attorney's Office and the state police in regard to this case?
Eventually, yes. Initially, I was contacted by a member of Cellbrite.
And if you know why was that initial, as far as the initial contact or initial request from Cellbrite, can you speak about that?
My understanding was there was an artifact found on a device, and people were looking for an explanation as to how this particular timestamp was relevant to the case.
Now, if you could explain to the jury sort of what you, what were you provided and what were you asked to look at?
So the original question is just basically how can we explain this 227 timestamp? I spoke to my colleague and requested if he could contact the investigators and any information that they could share about where this particular timestamp was found so that I could investigate it. I was advised at that time that the case had already been uploaded to our own support network. So the full extraction of the device in question was already in Cellbrite's possession. And I was able to access it from there and start to examine what the issue was that was causing the confusion.
Now, with reference to this issue, can you describe to the jury, just in general terms, sort of what this issue was?
Yes, so the issue, as I was led to believe, is there was a timestamp for a web history artifact of 2:27 and 40 seconds AM local time, which would be UTC-5, and it didn't make sense to the investigators. And the question was, is there any other interpretation for what this timestamp could mean?
And so essentially you were asked to explain the timestamp and how it came to be, correct?
Correct.
And as far as this particular issue, has this arisen in other instances? Have you been asked the same question or similar questions in regard to this type of artifact?
Yeah, several weeks later, so probably around December time last year, I was contacted by a police investigator in Austria with a very similar question, but related to obviously a different internet search. And about a week later, the defense expert in the same case also contacted me asking the same question. The defense expert in that case was able to provide the database, and I was able to provide the answer.
Now, as far as the full extraction, is that the entirety of what you looked at in this instance, or what, if anything else, were you provided with in regard to your review and your analysis in this case?
So I did work with the full extraction, but my interest was focused on just the web history artifacts.
And what, if anything, did you find with regard to the web history artifact?
So the 2:27:40 timestamp was correct insofar as that is the time that is shown within the database. It was indeed a deleted record, but the interesting thing was why the timestamp said 2:27:40. And I did some testing on this and discovered the reason why 2:27:40 was actually listed in the database, even though that's not the time, in my opinion, that the search was conducted.
And
It's one of those weird things. There's a time listed, the particular item's been deleted, and then the time listed is not the actual time. Kind of a little bit of a mind job getting your head wrapped around. It's a simple thing, but it's a little bit convoluted, isn't it?
what is your opinion as to when the search was conducted?
There's plenty of other evidence on that extraction that shows what activity was occurring at 2:27 and 40 seconds. And there's plenty of evidence later on in the day that shows that that particular search was conducted at 6:23, I believe 51 seconds.
So let's do a quick test your knowledge. Do you know what search he's talking about? Now I've just kind of lost. What time did you say? 6:23 and was it 40 seconds? Let's just go back slightly.
27 and 40 seconds.
6:27. Okay. Hey, Vandimus. So it's quite a big difference going from, what was it, 2:27 to 6:27. It's a 4-hour difference. And effectively, we're talking about what? We're talking about a search for, I'm trying to think of what it was verbatim, but wasn't it HOS? How long does it take to die in the cold or something like that? Remember that? And so either that call was made pre-mortem, if that's a word, basically early on in the night at the time of the incident or close to the time of the incident, or it was made much later, wondering, has enough time passed by that this person's not going to make it, right? Yeah, how long to die in the cold? But I think it was mistyped. It was like HOS or something. But that is what's being sort of kind of discussed here. Was this very important search made at 2:27 or 6:27? He's saying it was made at 6:27. That's right. How long to die in the cold? Yeah. And this is kind of dealing with, was Jen part of some kind of conspiracy? Was Jen asking this question kind of innocently, or is there something else going on? And the time does definitely have a bearing, doesn't it? Anyway, let's continue.
And there's plenty of evidence later on in the day that shows that that particular search was conducted at 6:23, I believe 51 seconds, and then a similar search at 6:24 and 18 seconds, I believe.
And
True.
before we get to that, Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes.
So if you think about it, that kind of search out of context looks quite bad. It's almost like is it asking the question, if we leave someone out in the cold, how long will it take them to die?
Thank you.
But it could actually be the opposite, which is we don't know this person's condition. Is he alive? How long would it take someone to die in the cold? And so that's they're kind of two ways of interpreting it, right?
Yes,
Do you recognize that, sir?
I do, yes.
What do you recognize that to be?
This was the internet history, the history.db database table showing activity from the morning of the 29th of January 2022.
May I approach again, Your Honor?
Yes.
I will seek to introduce the next exhibit.
No objection.
Okay.
It says 14.
Your Honor, may I return to the witness?
Yes.
Your Honor, if I may, with the court's permission to republish it in the record.
Yes.
Please do vote in the poll if you haven't already. Obviously, you kind of need to watch Trooper Proctor's testimony, which we will do.
Okay,
But if you have watched it, do vote in the poll.
No, it's my fault.
Thank you.
Now, Mr. Whitman, do you recognize what's up on the screen now as the exhibit you have before you?
I do, yes.
And Ms. Whitman, there should be a laser pointer on the desk next to you. What I'm going to ask you to do is, if you could, using that laser pointer, explain to the jury what we're looking at in this exhibit and what, if anything, are significant.
Welcome, Jenny.
Within this exhibit.
Okay, of course. So this was a table I created based on the data from the phone. The first column shows the local time of a record that was written to the history database. This is a database which is tracking all web pages which are loaded as you use them. The second column starts with the URL, so the Uniform Resource Locator, so what you would type in or how the browser knows which website you want to visit.
We seem to be dealing with a
The title
sports fan.
Is part of the website which is loaded. One of the top attributes of the website will load the title. Visit count relates to an internal counter within Safari, which just tracks how many times a particular website is visited in order to make suggestions to you down the road. And then finally, the last column shows the source of this information. So history.db is the name of the database, history_visits is the name of the table, and then the number is the unique identifier, which is assigned to that particular record in consecutive order. So every time you add a new record, that number will increase by 1.
Seems to be about
Probably
softball.
a couple foundational questions that I should have asked you first. My apologies. With respect to the cell phone extraction that you were provided, that was from a individual named Jennifer McCabe. Is that correct?
That's my understanding, yes.
And fair to say you don't know Jennifer McCabe, never met her, don't know anything about her.
Correct.
And as far as a extraction is concerned, if you could please explain to the jury sort of what your understanding of that is. What is an extraction?
An extraction in this case, all of the files and folders had been extracted from the device, saved on a computer in a zip file container. So essentially in a way that is as close to the original from the device as possible.
And again, what is your title specifically with Cellbrite?
It's decoding product manager at the moment.
And so what, if any, relation does what you do have with relation to an extraction and how that's, what's sort of the relationship between what you do and
So is this guy part of the conspiracy, right? So Jenny is saying, I know nothing about this case. Well, this is a case where either a woman deliberately killed her boyfriend, and there's certainly reason to imagine that it's not even an accident. For example, if the vehicle was basically alerting her that there's someone near your vehicle, and you know, when you approach someone with a vehicle, it tells you near to somebody or whatever. If she ignored that and continued, that would be deliberate, right? The other side of the story is that it's some huge police conspiracy also involving a dog. And then the question is, if it is a police conspiracy, is this guy part of the police conspiracy? So in other words, whatever his testimony is he, do the long tentacles of this conspiracy also lead into Cellbrite? What do you think the answer is?
Cellbrite extraction?
So once the extraction's been extracted and we have the zip file, then Physical Analyzer is the tool that Cellbrite creates to allow examiners to look at that extracted data in a meaningful way. And my role is somewhat shaping how examiners will see that data when they open up Physical Analyzer and look at the extracted data.
And how does your role play into that? What is it that you do that have, what, if any, relationship does what you do have to do with how examiners?
Is Paul the trooper who said rotten things about Karen? I believe so.
Will view something from the Cellbrite tool.
Again, so after being an examiner for 10 or 11 years, I've got that kind of understanding of how examiners work. Being someone who also writes my own software and does my own research, then I can kind of cross that void that usually exists between developers and examiners and help both parties try to come to a meaningful conclusion.
Ms. Gilman, if you could shrink that just a little, or zoom out a little. Now, again, Mr. Whiffen, if you could, using that laser pointer, direct the jury's attention to what, if anything, is significant you observed depicted in this particular case.
Yes, so the lower two records, which are highlighted in green, are two records which occurred at 2:27 and 42 seconds local time. So 2 seconds after the Google search had allegedly been made. And then the second record is 5 seconds after that at 2:27, 47 seconds. Both those URLs relate to a website of hokamocksports.com.
So I think another way of looking at these URL visits are if you are planning a murder or executing a murder and then you execute the murder, would you kind of go to a sports site, kind of a murder happens and then you kind of go back to the sports site? Can you imagine that happening? Can you imagine someone is attacked and beaten up and there's this big conspiracy and we all need to get together and talk about this? Okay, but hold on, I just need to go and check the sports score. I know this guy is screaming and the dog's barking and this guy's, in the last moments of his life, but I just need to quickly check the sports score and I'll come back and deal with this a little bit later, right?
Now, if you could explain to the jury, what is a contiguous identifier?
So again, every SQLite database will assign a unique contiguous identifier number. So again, the very first record created will be given a record ID of 1. The second record will be 2.
Okay, so Joe, we will be dealing with Trooper Proctor as soon as we get to the break. We'll go to that testimony.
And so on and so forth. Those numbers are never reused. So if I was to delete record 3, that record number will never be reused, and I can see that there's a gap and deleted data in that database.
You used another term in there as far as a SQLite database. If you could explain to the jury what your understanding of that term is based on your training.
Yeah, a SQLite database, essentially, it's a series of tables. It's a way for data to be stored, again, in a meaningful, organized fashion that can be queried, can be examined, can be filtered, searched, etc. It can be useful for anybody who wants to get data from an organized file.
Now, with reference to the searches that you observed within this particular web history, what, if any, relationship did the contiguous identifiers, sort of the range, what if anything, did that tell you?
I'm sorry, can you rephrase that?
What, if any, observations did you make as far as those contiguous identifiers in the range they had in relation to the web history that you observed?
Okay, so within the history.db file, there were no missing numbers from the beginning of January, essentially, until early February. That told me as an examiner that no records had been deleted during that time.
May I approach again, Your Honor?
Yes.
If I could ask.
That one back.
Everyone
Thank you.
recognize that, sir?
I do, yes.
What do you recognize that to?
This is the browser state record, which identified a search at 2:27:40 a.m.
May I approach again, Your Honor?
Yes.
Almost.
We have no objection.
Okay. Thank you.
May I return to the witness, Your Honor?
Yes.
With court permission, may we publish it to the jury?
Yes.
Counselor, directing your attention to the screen, is that what you have before you as the next exhibit?
It is, yes.
And if you could explain to the jury what we're looking at in this exhibit and what, if any, information you're able to sort of glean.
So not that this is rocket science, but the letter S is immediately below W. So if she was typing how long, you can see how it could be a typo. What's the other thing? Let me ask you a question. If you, let's say you were climbing a mountain and somebody died on that mountain, and you'd Googled how long to die in the snow or in the cold, and then it became this huge media shitstorm, and it was all about who's to blame for this, right? Do you think you would delete that? Do you think you would be tempted to delete that? Do you think you would consider deleting that? And what I'm trying to say is, you innocent, somebody, you climbed a mountain with someone and someone died, and you Googled something, and you can see how that might look. Would you kind of be tempted to delete it? Let's see what you guys say. Joe says, I won't be a spoiler. Okay. I believe it was quite quite a shocking cross-examination.
As a forensic examiner with religion.
Okay, so this is a searched item exhibit. It's technically a derivative of a different exhibit that we find on the device. So we found what we consider a web history record. So a web history record would just mean we have a URL that was visited and potentially a timestamp and a title. Searched items looks at all of the web history items that we've found and tries to identify were these actually searches that were conducted. So for example, if you were to do a search on Google, you'd see that the website that you're taken to is google.com query, and then it contains the query string that you've typed in. We extract that information, we extract that query and provide it to the user as a searched item. In this case, I can see that it came from the browserstate.db WAL file. The search query itself was Hoslong to dying cold.
Yeah, but this is a little bit different. We're not saying if I'm guilty, would I delete something? We're saying if I'm innocent, would I delete something? In other words, is deleting something always a sign of guilt?
And it shows as a deleted record.
Now, with respect, I think you've used a couple of different terms within that.
It's quite an interesting point that some of you make. What is the point of deleting something? Well, not every case is high profile. Not every case gets this kind of scrutiny. Not every case gets this kind of legal, what's the word, surgery. And so sometimes when basic things are removed, people don't go to the effort to actually try and find the deleted files. Think about the Rex Heuermann case. How long has it taken them to find that deleted document? They didn't find it right in the beginning. They seem to have found it fairly recently, right? So you only find that sort of thing when you're really looking for what you think. In other words, it's kind of a unknown, and those are very difficult to find. You don't know that they exist, but you search anyway, right?
As far as a knowledge C database, can you explain to the jury what that is?
I don't recall saying knowledge C, but I can explain what knowledge C is in this case.
If you could, please.
Yes, the knowledge C database is at the heart of iOS. It stores lots of information about the activity on the device at any given time. Things like when the backlight's turned on, when the device is unlocked, what application is in focus at the time and how long it's in focus for. And important to this case, which website's on screen at any given time as well.
Now, when you say when a website is in focus, can you expound upon that as far as what exactly do you mean by when you say in focus?
So in terms of iOS itself, when it's in focus, it would be the primary item that's visible on screen. So with iOS, you can have applications in the background that you aren't using, but the one that you are currently using is considered in focus, taking up the entire screen.
I believe you had used the term as far as a browser state DB. Is that correct?
Correct.
And can you explain to the jury what your understanding of that term is and how it relates to it?
Browser state DB is just the name of the database, the name that Apple gave it. It's gone through some changes over the last few years. For example, in iOS 14, it did store the state of the tabs that were open within a browser. In iOS 15, there was a significant change, and the only time that records were written to the database is when the tab was closed. So a significant difference in that it doesn't show you what's currently open, it only shows you what's previously been closed.
Now, this search here, what, if anything, did you observe as far as this record in relation to the history DB related to the search?
This record is not mentioned at all within the history.db database.
And what, if any, missing records from this time frame did you observe either?
There were no missing records in the history.db database. Within this time frame, within the browser state database, there were 3 deleted records.
When you say deleted records, as far as your self-write tool is concerned, what exactly does deleted mean?
These are records that have been deleted, not necessarily by the user, potentially by the system, but they are considered deleted records that we're able to recover.
What are some of the ways that something might be deleted by the system, and which system, are you talking about the phone or are you talking about your tool?
The phone. Our tool is designed as a forensic tool. It's not going to edit, delete, or affect the data in any way, just present what is in the extraction. But there are multiple times on an iOS device or an Android device where cleanup essentially happens, and we start to lose data after a certain amount of time.
Now, with respect, let me just ask this for a moment. With respect to self-writing.
Okay, so someone's sort of asking something out of the realm of this case. I think, you know, like if you compare Rex Human and you say, is Asa or Victoria involved? I would say no, and that's quite clear and obvious as far as I'm concerned. But I don't think it's as clear and obvious in this case, in Madeleine Soto. But I'm also a little bit cautious in making a accusation without further evidence. So I would need to study that report. She was a working mother, and I think she was sometimes not at home. That's not really an excuse. I'm sure her daughter would have communicated verbally or non-verbally, you know, signs of distress. And what did her mother do? I also just want to quickly mention, I actually specifically went to Kissimmee to investigate the Madeleine Soto case in terms of going into the fabric, going to the crime scene. And I was there, but actually didn't do it. And that kind of happened quite a lot on this trip through America. I went to certain places. I also went to Nashville, meant to go to the Sebastian Rogers fabric, and didn't. Why? Couple of reasons. Not enough time. In certain cases, I was sick, and in other cases, I had to, not had to, but I was meeting people, and also just kind of running out of energy, I guess. I suppose I could have added that to the itinerary, but yeah. So in the Madeleine Soto case, that was something I went to do, and I didn't actually get to do it. And I was pretty exhausted at that stage anyway. So that, I don't know if that answers your question. I am interested in that case, but I'm also feeling quite overstretched in terms of my coverage as it is. So I'll have to think about it.
As far as the tools, have there been a variety of different versions of those tools as far as conducting that forensic extraction?
Yes. Cellbrite Physical Analyzer has been available for approximately 12, 13 years in various versions.
And what, if any, differences are there between, in general terms, between, say, an older version versus a newer version?
Obviously, in the digital forensics landscape, whenever a provider creates a new feature, we have to change our code to adapt to what they've now introduced. There can be research that has been done, so we now learn new things, and we add support over time. So something can be supported in this new version of Physical Analyzer that may not have been supported or even existed in a previous version.
Now, with respect to your work in this field, what, if any, tools have you designed and or created or something to conduct this type of work?
Aside from Physical Analyzer?
Yes.
Okay, so I have my own tool called Artex, which I've been working on for around 5 years. Since being an examiner myself and struggling to parse any particular application that I needed. So I started to write my own tools, and that's the one that is one that I still maintain on the side in my own time, partly for my own knowledge, but partly because I think it still introduces some fantastic features which aren't available in any other tool for research purposes. So yeah, I continue to write this tool to this day.
And could you just say the name?
Artex, A-R-T-E-X.
Thank you.
Now, with regard to the situation depicted in the exhibit up on the screen, what are some of the reasons why this may occur, or why this may read as it does?
Sorry, is it deleted?
Yes.
Oh, the record itself has been deleted. As I said, the reason why it's deleted, through my testing, I've only found 2 ways that kind of record can be deleted by the user. And I don't believe either of those ways was actually utilized on this device.
And what are those 2 ways?
The user has the option to selectively delete history items. So you can delete either one at a time, or the entire day's content, or the last 2 days' content. Or you can
So if you were the defense, what would you do with this witness? How would you question this witness in order to, I guess, make Jen McCabe look bad? Would you want to deal with him in detail? Would you want to know just how many things were deleted? Would you want to highlight some other content that was available there? What do you think you would do?
delete all content altogether. Now, if all content had been deleted, we wouldn't have found any information on this phone at all related to web history, so I was able to discount that one quite quickly.
And I guess alluding to what you had just said, why is it that you don't believe that either of those 2 methods of user deletion occurred in this context?
Objection, may we approach, please?
I'm sorry?
I said objection, may we approach, please?
Okay.
Where is Karen Reed? There she is. Now, for me, a question that I think needs to be asked, a lot of this trial has been about just how horrible and corrupt, and I'm not saying that that's not true, but a lot of this trial has been about the character of the police, right? Is it fair to ask the same question about Karen Reed? What kind of person is she? How good is her self-esteem? Is she a reactive or vindictive person? Is she an honest person? Has she been honest in the past? Questions like that. Or do we not ask any of those questions and we simply focus on the character of the police? Is that fair? Is it fair to say, let's look at the character of the person on the one side, okay, and then let's look at the character of the potential other alternative perpetrator on the other side? Is it fair to do that?
Did.
Or do we only look at the one side? Do you think people are looking at both sides? Well, this guy's yawning on camera, not a good look. Small little desk, eh?
May I have one moment, John?
Sure.
Mr. Whiffen, moving on from that for a moment, may I approach the witness, John?
Yes.
Thank you.
That document I've just handed you, Mr. Whiffen, you recognize that?
I do, yes.
And what do you recognize that?
It's a document that highlights both the search terms that were found in mobile-safari.plist and the method of searching.
I approach again, Your Honor.
Yes.
I'm off the seat to introduce the witness in the next exhibit. No objection.
Okay.
So just a quick observation. I just want to go back a little bit. Can you see this lady? Can you see this lady on her phone here on the side? Let's just do this. Can you see that? Right, this lady's on her phone, and there's that other guy on a computer over there, and the screen is, I think that's a screen that's flipped up, right? And the reason I'm bringing it up is, did you guys know that in the Chad Daybell trial, I'm just going to let it run while I'm talking. In the Chad Daybell trial, a juror actually saw Chad Daybell flipping through autopsy photos of Tammy Daybell, and he said he could see what Chad was looking at, and he said that Chad was just absolutely unemotional, just looking at these autopsy photos. And then he said when the court was in session and these autopsy photos were shown, then suddenly he brought out the tissues and he looked really emotional. And he said that was a very significant moment for him. And little things like that, observations that jurors make, can change the outcome of the case. And it turned out that that juror, I think it's juror number 8, was an alternate at the end of the day. And I personally think a thing like that shouldn't change a juror's position. You know, you shouldn't have one thing that they see that changes everything. It needs to be the whole aggregate of all the evidence. But I'm just saying there are a lot of little things that happen in court that you may not even be aware of, but the jurors may be aware of. That's just one example. Anyway, let's listen in again. Did you guys know about that? About this juror seeing him going through the autopsy evidence on the computer before the trial session?
You did use a term in there, I believe, called a P list. Is that correct?
Correct.
Can you explain to the jury what you understand that term to mean and how it relates to what you're about to talk about?
Yes, so a P list or a property list is Apple's way of storing serialized data. That essentially means a list of data with names and values.
If you look at that, how long to die in cold, how long, and then TI died, the letter I and O also next to each other. K and L are also next to each other. So those are obviously typos. You can imagine in the snow, and you haven't had really much sleep that night, and maybe you're hungover. All of those are gonna what's the word? Is it aggravate, militate, are going to sort of lead to the likelihood that you're going to make a mistake like that, right?
And sir, if you could, again, using that laser pointer, direct the jury's attention to explain sort of what we're looking at and what, if anything, of significance you observe in this particular slide or table.
Yeah, so again, this is a table I created from the data within the mobile Safari.plist. The term shown down the left is what the user would have typed in to the search bar. Sorry, I keep blinding somebody. The search bar in the bottom of the Safari browser window. The UTC time is the time which is actually recorded within the plist. It's recorded as a string, so just text as it's presented on the screen there. And then I converted that and subtracted 5 hours to bring it into local time around Canton.
Now, aside from this, just for a moment, with regard,
She might even be doing it with gloves on, well, probably not, but with cold fingers, right?
There's a private browsing mode.
Yes.
And can you explain to the jury what that is and how it relates to this?
Yeah, so private browsing mode is a setting that you can set on iOS devices, or primarily most devices, that prevents any of your browsing activity being recorded. So it won't save the searches, it won't save the navigations, it protects everything so that it can't be found later on.
And what, if any, relation did that have to what your analysis of the extraction in this case?
If these searches had been conducted while in private browsing mode, these searches would not exist within this file.
So is it your opinion that they were not conducted in any kind of private browsing mode?
Correct.
Now, you also familiar with the term as far as failure to load?
Yes.
Can you explain that to the jury and how that applies to this?
Yes, so obviously whenever you try to visit a web page, there's a stream of information coming from the web to the device, which then renders onto the screen. At the completion of the load event, there's a function effectively which runs, and that records the visit to the history database. If for some reason the page doesn't load and it shows up with an unable to load message, so for example, you don't have an internet connection at all, that unable to load will be recorded. If, however, the device stalls and it just sits kind of waiting to load, nothing gets written to the history database. And if you were to close the browsing window...
But incidentally, we've got a similar thing like that in the trial of Christian Bruckner, where emails have been apparently deleted. I don't know whether they've recovered them. I think that's a little bit different. Deleted emails, I think, can be completely deleted. But it's kind of a similar kind of situation. Why was something deleted? When was it deleted? What was deleted?
Prior to the page completing its load event, nothing will be written to history.
Or would that be written to somewhere else within the function?
Okay, so Joe, do you think it was at 2 or 6?
As far as any other
What do you think? Do you think it was at 2 or 6?
Technically, the only place I found would be the browser state.
Now, with regard to the plist files, does the plist file save all sort of history items?
Hi, Earth. Good to see you.
Primarily, it's used to save preferences. So you'd have a lot of information in there if it's using light mode or dark mode, or when you want tabs to auto clear, that kind of information. But it also records several days' history of searches. The actual number of days searches, I actually don't know.
And what, if any, relationship does that have with regard to the search bar that's located on the bottom of this table?
In order for the search item to be saved to the mobile Safari plist, you need to actually type into this particular search bar. If you were to just visit google.com and start typing into the Google search bar, it will not be recorded within the mobile Safari.p list.
And so what, if anything, were you able to determine about those two searches with regards to what you observed here?
So these particular two searches were conducted at 6:23:51 and 6:24:18 respectively. They were searched using the search bar that's built into Safari. The fact that they didn't exist within HistoryDB and that there were no deleted records from history.db leads me to believe that they never successfully loaded.
May I approach again, Your Honor?
Yes.
So not there yet says it's a tough call, 2 or 6. Is it? I mean, this expert's saying that he thinks it's after 6. That's his opinion. I don't know. To me, it's obvious that it was 6.
Handed you, do you recognize that?
I do, yes.
What do you recognize that?
This was the additional, or the items from the history.db, I believe.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
I'm about to seek to introduce and admit as the next exhibit.
Objection.
Not there. It says even if it was at 6, it's still questionable. So it's like if it we don't know whether it was 2 or 6, but even if it was 6, it's still a problem. Okay. Earth says after 6 seems logical. Now, what I find with this case is just what's incredible with this case is how bias seems to infect everything. So whatever you think about, it's based on the bias that you bring with you. So you don't kind of go, what happened here? What is the evidence showing? If the evidence goes against your bias, then you throw the evidence out. If the evidence goes with your bias, then it's acceptable. I don't know. I find that kind of thing quite worrying.
Okay. Could you bring it?
Okay, so Joe, do you believe this expert? So he's not a police expert. He's I guess, an independent expert, and his assessment is that he thought it was made at 6. Do you believe him? Is he making an innocent mistake, or do you simply not believe him? Karen has got her arms folded. She probably doesn't like this expert very much. She doesn't seem very excited. I don't know why you say, why would she Google that so quickly? Well, you want to know, maybe they don't know if he's alive. Remember, he was taken to hospital. Karen was like doing CPR. And you don't know how long he's been out there. And so if Google says to you, it could take 8 hours to die in the cold, then you might say, well, there's no way he was outside for 8 hours, maybe he's still alive. That seems to be what's being kind of assessed.
You are unmuted.
Okay.
Sure. May I return to the witness?
Yes.
Okay, Tamika.
If you could just repeat
Come on.
exactly what that is in the next exhibit.
Sorry, it's a comparison between the search terms found in the P list, so the mobile Safari P list, and the search terms found within the history.db database.
So the items contained within this table are items.
Tammy says hi, guys.
That you examined, correct?
But just
Correct.
quickly put him on screen.
If I could,
Timmy says hi.
Yes.
He's trying to stay warm. So am I, actually. Hi, guys. Are you giving me a look?
Again, using the laser pointer just to describe to the jury what we're looking at in this table and.
Hey, guys.
Anything of significance between sort of two sources of information.
Okay,
so
Timmy.
the first list,
Sleep.
the plist term, shows the term within the mobile Safari.p list, excluding the two that we've already mentioned, which are of note. And the first timestamp column shows the timestamp according to that p list. The history item shows the search term as recorded in the history database. And then we have the timestamp as per the history database. So the purpose of this document was to show that we have a search for raining men and a history item related to the Google search for raining men, and they show within a second of each other.
Thanks for your
Again,
answer, Joe.
the next one down, Antoinette Ock and basketball, and the associated Google search. And again, the timestamps are within a second. This list was non-exhaustive. There was hundreds of examples within.
So do you remember I said, if you were on a mountain and someone died and the next thing it became this media shitstorm, would you delete the information, right? You can see right over here that she's Googled her own name, Jennifer McCabe, right? And it's because she's concerned that she's going to be basically investigated. And this kind of thing, whether you're innocent or guilty, that kind of being tarred by the media brush can last a lifetime. Certainly people who are going to decide, let's say for the sake of argument that Jennifer McCabe is innocent, but they're going to be people who are going to believe that she isn't regardless. Right? So would you want to be associated with something and that's going to kind of almost be branded on you for the rest of your life? Would you want that? Anyone, I think, would be concerned about that, right? Anyway, let's continue.
The history.db, but limited examples within the mobile Safari P list.
Not there yet. It says if you're in rescue mode, why are you Googling? Well, at that stage, weren't the paramedics there? So you've handed somebody over and probably you want to know, are they going to survive? Are they going, what are their prospects, right? I don't know if you're going to say that I mean, when you've handed someone over to the paramedics, there's nothing more you can really do. So what are you going to do?
And as I mentioned, the two searches of interest, the how long to die in the Kikdi and how long to die in the cold, didn't exist within the history DB at all.
Ms. Gilman, you can take that down. Now, sir, if I could ask you just a little bit now about the browser state DB. Again, can you explain to the jury sort of what that is and how it, if at all, it plays a role in your analysis?
Yep. So initially, pre and including iOS 14, the browser state database would show all tabs that you currently had opened. So as soon as I go into my browser and open a new tab, a record is created. It includes information such as the time that I opened the tab or the time I last viewed the tab, the current URL, which is being displayed within that tab. It shows information whether it's in private browsing mode or not. So in that kind of case, in iOS 14 and below, we're able to see current private browsing records and subsequently recover deleted ones. But in iOS 15, things changed. The record was no longer written as soon as the tab was opened. It was only opened when the tab was closed. Sorry, the record was only created when the tab was closed. That meant that our ability to recover that kind of history was significantly lower. It means that it no longer makes use of the private browsing field, because now private browsing records simply are never written to that database. So now we can only really see a list of all of the tabs that have been closed, not which are currently open.
Now, with regard to the browser state DB, is there something referred to as a last view timestamp?
There is, yes. That's one of the fields within the database.
And can you explain specifically with relation to that field, sort of what kind of information is kept there and what it means?
Yeah, so from my research based on this, that timestamp relates to the time that the tab took focus. So that's either when the user creates the brand new tab, when they switch between tabs and bring a tab back into focus, when they close a tab, which automatically brings one of the background tabs into focus, or if Safari has been completely closed and reopened, that essentially acts like almost a new tab.
Okay, so I'm going to jump over to the cross-examination. I've got an idea it doesn't go on for very long unless it's interrupted by a recess, but let's just quickly go to the, I think this is where the cross-examination starts.
For several hours, for several days, for several weeks. The time difference is not.
Jerry.
Oh, this is just, the cross-examination is after this, looks like.
And could I see counsel regarding timing, please?
Yes.
Well, she almost made like a complete circle. It's like, anyone want to get a look at me? Kind of made a complete circle there. Okay, so we're going to go from here. I just want to have a look at Karen, and then we're going to go to Trooper Proctor. You guys ready? This is Karen Reed's dad and her mother. Okay, are you guys ready? Yeah, it was a pirouette. Definitely was a pirouette. Joe says, Joe's been following the case all along. You've been doing a better job than me. I've only really followed it on X, just looking at what they are summarizing of the case there. But I'm not surprised when you say that. Earth says, I've noticed her talking to her parents sometimes. Joe says, let's go. Okay. Yeah, well, I think that's about it. Okay, so we're going to go right to the beginning. Are you guys ready to jump across time and space? Here we go.
Since we left you, everyone said no or shook their heads. Thank you very much. Could we please have Trooper Paul?
And just watch your step for me. Thank you.
So much for the understatement report and jury in the case now and here, and the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Morning, Trooper.
I think this is Trooper Paul. That's right, eh? not Trooper Proctor, Trooper
All right,
Paul.
Mr. Lally, whenever you're ready.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
If you could just again, please state your name and spell your last name for the jury.
Yes, it's Trooper Joe Paul. That's
Joe Paul.
P-A-U-L.
And sir, if I could just take you back to a couple different portions of your testimony from Friday. With respect to the acceleration and braking tests that you conducted in the driveway area or outside of the Canton Police Department, was that before or after Ms. Hartnett from Crime Scene Services section had processed the vehicle?
After.
And so as far as anything that was removed by her, that was done prior to you conducting any of your tests, is that correct?
Correct.
Now, you've investigated approximately 191 crashes over your time with the cars unit with the state police, correct?
Correct.
Now, I'm going to ask you just some general questions with regard to a number of those crashes have involved motor vehicles, collisions with other motor vehicles, correct?
Yes.
Now, in general terms, with respect to motor vehicle collision, what, if any, you talked a little bit last week about sort of area of impact and point of impact, correct?
Correct.
Now, that's with regard to the roadway, is that correct?
Yes, it is.
So with regard to the vehicles coming in contact with each other, what, if anything, regarding damage would you expect or anticipate based on your experience in general terms when vehicles come in contact or touch with each other in a collision sequence? Objection.
No, I'm going to allow it. In general terms, what do you look for?
So we look, well, it's two times of damage onto a vehicle. One's contact damage and one's an induced damage. So when we look at vehicles, we are looking for what's called as contact damage. And the induced damage is basically, start from the beginning. So contact damage is the damage that is actually made direct contact with another vehicle. And induced damage is the damage that did not make direct contact. So for example, if you push in one piece of metal to make contact, the rest of the metal will make a rippling effect that would be more cause induced damage.
And just again, in general terms, as far as vehicles coming in contact with each other in a collision sequence, what, if anything?
So that is kind of what's being asked here is, did two vehicles come in contact with each other, or did a vehicle come in contact with the human body? That's really at issue here.
Would you expect or anticipate, based on your experience, to sort of transfer from one vehicle to the other event?
It's possible when you transfer, you can have paint transfers that come from one vehicle to another. You got tire rub off that go from one vehicle to another. Scratches that would come from one vehicle to another.
And
Joe, I just want to give him a little bit of a chance to say his thing, and then we'll go to the cross. I hope it's not going to be too long, but let's just deal a little bit with the testimony in chief, okay?
again, sir, just in general terms, when it comes to vehicles interacting with each other in a collision sequence, what, if any, role does the respective heights of those vehicles play in respect to contact damage or inducement?
Yeah, it depends on their heights and how they relate to each other. So that kind of shows if one vehicle is taller, one smaller, it's going to show where the contact damage would be from one vehicle to another based on their height.
So just to be fair, we're dealing with somebody who deals with vehicles that are damaged, right? We're not dealing with a doctor, who performs autopsies. You're dealing with a kind of a very basic level of, like compare car accident investigator to a homicide investigator. They're dealing with a much narrower band of information. Also consider the kind of person who wants to do that sort of thing. It's kind of a very simpler kind of investigation. You know what I'm saying? And so, one's got to just bear that in mind, I think.
So based on respective heights, contact or induced damage could be in a different location from a bigger vehicle to a smaller vehicle, correct?
Correct.
Hey, Sharon.
Now, if I could turn you back to the text stream analysis that you conducted with respect to the defendant's vehicle. Now, the two events that occurred forgive me, on that 12629 miles deep, there were two events that occurred within that trigger, within that mileage. Is that correct?
Correct.
And based on your analysis with respect to the odometer readings and the mileage, where is it what is your belief as to where the vehicle was when those two events, being 3-point turn and the backup straight for approximately 60 some odd feet, where did those occur within the travel path of the defendant's vehicle?
So the first one, where the 3-point turn, in this case, it appeared to be possibly on to, it was a Cedar Crest, which, because we know based on testimonies that she missed the exit to Fairview and had to make a U-turn onto Cedar Crest. And that would make sense to why they would occur with close proximity to each other. They're within the same odometer mileage and on the same key cycle.
And so that reverse 24.2 miles per hour for 60 some odd feet, where would that have occurred geographically from your review of the odometer reading?
It should occur probably on Fairview.
Does he look a little bit nervous?
Now, sir, based on the totality of your analysis and your investigation in this case, what, if any, conclusions did you come to as to how this collision sequence occurred or how this crash occurred?
Yes. Should I go my report for that, or should you want me to just kind of go off the?
asking to look at your report? Is that what?
Yes.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay.
Thank you.
Can we continue?
If you could, please.
Okay.
What, if any, conclusions did you come to through the course of your investigation?
So on Saturday, January 29th, 2022, at approximately 12:45.
So you can look at your report, but you can't read your report.
I was
So
reading my conclusions based on what they asked me to do. Okay.
yeah. So I can't hear you.
Sorry.
Okay. So just take your time, read your report, and then answer Mr. Lally's question. And if you need to look at your report, we'll see about that again.
All right.
Ask the question, Mr. Lally.
Based on the totality of your investigation, what, if any, conclusions did you come to with regard to how this collision occurred?
So this collision occurred on Saturday, January 29th, 2022, at approximately 12:45 hours. A 2021 Lexus LX 570 was traveling southbound on.
Okay, so look at what we're dealing with. In his opinion, John O'Keefe was struck. I suppose you could draw that inference, but let's put it another way. In his opinion, there was some kind of incident where Karen's vehicle struck something at 12:45, right? Then you had possibly this Google search at 2:27 or not, right? But you basically have a pretty accurate, or you kind of have a timestamp for when this incident likely happened, 12:45. Well, is it accurate? Isn't it? But that's certainly giving you an idea what's going on here. Did any of this happen at the beginning of the evening or at the end of the evening? Right. And what are the implications if this did happen at the beginning? Well, one of them is that he would have been in the cold for a long time, and the snow accumulations seem to support that, doesn't it?
on Fairview Road, in area 34 Fairview Road.
Yeah.
She did say that to three
So-
Sorry, I'm trying
different
to
So,
oppose it.
people.
you know what? I don't, Mr. Lally, break this down. Ask
Yes, please.
simple questions so that the witness can answer your questions. We don't need a narrative.
Oh, let's do that.
From your investigation, what, if any, conclusions did you come to as to where this collision occurred?
All right. So on the night of Saturday, January 2022, at approximately 12:45 hours, a 2021 Lexus LX 570.
Can you slow down, sir?
Yes.
So forget all that part,
Okay.
Trooper.
All
Just answer the question.
Okay.
Where did it occur?
It occurred in the area 34 Fairview Road.
And who, if anyone, were the participants in this collision scene?
The operator appeared to be Karen Reed, and the pedestrian was John O'Keefe.
And where was the vehicle located in reference to the residents of 34 Fairview Road?
It was located along the southbound travel lane and to the left side of the house as you look at it from the front.
And as far as the vehicle, what, if any, directionality did it head in, and what, if any, interaction did it have with Mr. O'Keefe?
So the vehicle was traveling in reverse along the southbound travel lane, traveling north.
And how fast was the vehicle traveling and over what distance?
The vehicle traveled up to 24 miles per hour and approximately 62 feet.
And at the time that the vehicle was traveling approximately 24 miles per hour over approximately 62 feet, what, if anything, occurred then?
The right rear of the Lexus struck the pedestrian John O'Keefe.
And post-collision, what, if anything, occurred with regard to Mr. O'Keefe?
Mr. O'Keefe was projected forward and to the left along the front yard of 34 Fairview Road.
And post-collision with Mr. O'Keefe, what, if anything, did the defendant's vehicle?
The Lexus continued traveling in reverse before they left the area.
Now, as far as the vehicle itself, from your inspection.
So can I ask a stupid question? Bear in mind, I haven't followed this case extremely closely. Is he determining this? Is he extrapolating this from car tracks, tire marks, that side of things, or is extrapolating that from telematics, or both?
What, if any, role did any mechanical aspects of the
Yeah,
vehicle
that's
play?
exactly the same thing I'm
There were no
asking.
mechanical defects.
And as far as your analysis of the roadway and other factors related to that, what, if any, role did they play in this collision sequence?
There were no roadway or environmental factors that contribute to this collision.
Now, sir, with respect to your investigation, what, if any, opinions did you draw based on your training and experience in regard to?
Oh, that's interesting. Cell phone data. That really is interesting.
May I look at my report real quick? Just make sure.
Yes.
Thank you. All right.
Did you hear that sigh?
So throughout my investigation, this appeared to be a single car collision involving a pedestrian. The vehicle was traveling at a higher acceleration when
It is pretty
Sorry.
fast.
the vehicle accelerated at a high rate of speed before she struck the pedestrian John O'Keefe on the roadway and subsequently left him at the scene.
And with respect to the backup safety system that you observed in this vehicle and made use of in the course of your
Now,
visibility
24 miles an hour is almost 40 kilometers an
how
hour,
this crash.
which is almost
Based on the visibility analysis. So
the speed limit
even
in
if
urban
the camera
areas
systems
when you're
were
going
covered in
forward.
snow, even the systems were defective anyway, and even the mirrors were blocked, an attentive and a reasonable operator would not travel in reverse, especially at a high rate of speed. They would have cleaned the mirrors off. They would have made the cameras and systems, if they worked, if they didn't work, they would have done all this prior to accelerating in reverse.
The objection sustained.
Move to strike.
I'm going to strike that.
Hey,
With
Jazzy.
respect to your observations during the course of the visibility analysis, the exemplar pedestrian that you placed in the right rear of the vehicle, was that exemplar pedestrian visible to you at the time that you conducted that visibility analysis?
Yes, it was.
Thank you, sir. I have no further questions.
Okay, cross-examination?
Thank you, Your Honor.
Are you guys ready for the cross-examination? This is apparently brutal. And he's having a drink here just to get ready. Are you guys ready?
Do you hold any degrees in the scientific discipline of mathematics?
I do not.
Do you hold any degrees in the scientific discipline of physics?
I do not.
Hold any degrees in the scientific discipline of biomechanics?
No.
How about in engineering?
No.
How about in kinematics?
No.
So let me ask you a quick question here. Would you expect someone who's basically a car crash investigator to hold a degree in engineering? I mean, I'd kind of like to know what if any qualification do car crash investigators have? What degree do you need? Should be qualification, I guess. Do you need to be a car crash investigator? What do you think is the answer? Someone says you need a psychology degree. Okay. How do you become an accident investigator? Answer, there are no courses, blah, blah, blah. At accident investigator education requirements, high school diploma. So it's kind of a bit unfair asking that because you don't need a degree anyway. Here's an article, obviously it's a South African article, how to choose an accident investigator. It's a highly specialized field. Selecting the right job requires understanding of your needs. So you can have someone with a skill in photography, narrative skills, advanced 3D computer visualization, and then all the way up to mechanical engineering and even psychology. Let's be clear about this. Anyone can grab a camera, rush off to an accident, take photographs, record basic details, make notes, even your secretary. When someone represents themselves as an accident investigator, accident assessors are also hardly qualified to represent your interests, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, the point is you can have accident investigators that have no qualifications, and you can have some that have very advanced qualifications, right? Not there, it says he has an associate degree and a few classes. But I mean, do you think he's being fair in how he's undermining this witness? Instead of saying, what are your qualifications? He's saying, do you have a degree in this or this or this or that or that? Anyway, let's listen to the rest.
Highest degree that you do hold, sir?
I have an associate's degree.
In what?
Administration of justice.
You mentioned kinematics on Friday. Do you hold any certificates in the specific area of kinematics?
Yes, it's covered in the basic crash investigation classes.
Okay, so you took a class, in other words, correct?
Multiple classes.
They introduced the idea of what kinematics is, right?
Correct.
Testified about that on Friday.
Yes.
Define kinematics. It's yours.
It deals with the aspect of motion.
It's a subfield of what broader field?
Kinematics.
Kinematics is a subfield of what broader discipline of science?
I'm not sure.
Physics, correct?
Yes.
And it describes how points and objects and systems of objects, how they move and how the rate they move and the rate of their velocity, correct?
It deals with the motions.
What's that called? The rate of velocity. What's another word for that?
The rate of velocity.
Correct.
I mean, it deals with the motion. It deals with forward, and also deals with speed. It deals with travel and speed.
Isn't it momentum?
If something's moving, it also has a speed to it.
Right. The word you're looking for is acceleration, correct?
Okay.
Sure.
What role does acceleration play in the field of kinematics?
The rate.
What role
okay.
does so what role does acceleration play in kinematics?
Right.
It talks
Yes, it
about, like you
is.
just said, it talks about the
Cross-examination.
speed and talks about motion.
Is kinematics also known as the geometry of motion? Is that correct?
I have not heard that.
Never heard that. What's the difference between constrained and unconstrained motion?
Constrained and unconstrained motion.
That's what I asked.
Constrained motion.
Big sigh.
I can't recollect at the moment.
Constrained motion is motion on a predetermined path, isn't it?
Yes.
Unconstrained motion is what?
When it doesn't have a predetermined path.
Free movement, correct?
Correct.
Could you remember that from your class?
For the most part, we don't go that in depth, constrained and unconstrained.
Constrained.
Can you hear his voice is actually kind of breaking? I mean, imagine you being in this position. You have a job, you on trial, you're on camera, and you're kind of being tested in terms of your knowledge of your job, kind of in front of the whole country.
Unconstrained, not restrained.
That's what I said. Sorry, unconstrained. Yes.
Kinematics uses algebraic formula to model these motions, right? The motions of these points and systems of points, correct?
Yes.
And it includes concepts like displacement and speed, velocity, distance, acceleration, which we've talked about, correct?
Correct.
And it looks at how these things, these values vary over a point in time or duration in time. Is that right?
Yes.
Do you actually understand the physics behind the study of kinematics?
Yes.
The word you learned in class.
Yes, we had to go over the physics part of it.
On Friday, you said that this incident is a pedestrian strike from a vehicle. You reiterated that.
For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction, right? Newtonian law. I think there are three of them.
Correct.
I want to be clear. That is your opinion based on your training and experience, correct?
Yes.
And on Friday, you said you based that opinion on the fact that you noted a half-mile-an-hour decrease in speed and a steering input of less than 10 degrees at some point in that reverse motion, correct?
I said that was consistent. That data point in general was consistent with something that you would see within data of a pedestrian striker striking something else. I do go in my report saying I can't say that's definitively where a pedestrian was struck, but
I'm sorry, I can barely.
it wasn't definitively. Sorry, in my report I do say I can't say that is definitively where the pedestrian struck.
You cannot say
Definitively, yes.
Okay, so you're going to have to slow down and speak up, okay?
All right.
You just said, I just want to make sure I'm hearing you correctly, and I apologize.
Okay.
You said you cannot say definitively that that resulted in a pedestrian strike.
That data point within the tech stream data is what I'm talking about.
Okay.
That specific points, that time frame.
Because there's a multitude of reasons why when someone is driving in reverse, they might slow down by a half a mile an hour, right?
It's when I say when it's consistent, it's because there's the other aspects of it is the fact that the accelerator is consistently strong.
Let him answer. Finish your answer.
So the accelerator is at a constant rate, and then
You can actually hear he's struggling to enunciate consistent, right? Another way to fluster a witness is you interrupt them, you keep shooting questions at them, and you're trying to actually, confuzzle them.
Just drops by half a mile, and the steering wheel all of a sudden abruptly goes to the right. That's what I'm talking about when I say it is consistent with a pedestrian strike. That's something that you would see. It's not going to be a huge change of speed during this collision.
You also note that at the time, it had begun to snow, correct?
Yes,
There would be snow on the lawn, right?
correct.
There would be snow on the cars,
Yes,
snow on the trees,
yes,
there would be snow on the roadway.
yes,
Snow on the roadway could impact how tires move over the roadway, correct?
in a way.
And obviously, there are a multitude of reasons why somebody might input a 10-degree input on a steering wheel, right?
Correct. That's why I said I couldn't definitely say it.
Right. So every time somebody slows down, going in reverse or forward, and introduces a 10-degree input on the steering wheel, doesn't mean they're looking to hit a pedestrian, correct?
Correct.
You testified that you determined the area of impact by basically following, if I heard your testimony correctly, basically following the debris field from the body from where you believed John O'Keefe's body's final resting place was, almost linearly to the furthermost piece of debris that was found. Did I get that right?
Yes.
In other words, you established what in your mind, or what you were told was his final resting place, and what you were told was the debris field. And you indicated that the furthermost piece of debris would basically be the area, right?
It's within that line. I didn't say that is the area impact where the furthermost piece of evidence is.
All right.
It's just the linear, like you said earlier. It's that linear. We're going that path. That's the path that he traveled post impact with the vehicle.
And that is on which that fact that you stated is on which it's a terrible question. That's the basis for your opinion of where the area of impact was, correct?
Yes.
Let's take a look at exhibit, with the court's permission, 587. It's your diagram 3. If I may approach, Your Honor, just for...
Okay.
Big sigh, big nervous sigh.
May I approach?
Yes.
So you can see it.
Okay, we're going to see some
Your Honor, may we publish exhibit 587? diagram
Yes.
3?
exhibits.
Okay. Sir, you see diagram 3 on the board. You also have it in front of you, correct?
Yes.
It's easier for you to refer to what's in front of you because that's a little bit further away. Just let me know.
Okay.
The red arrows adjacent to the blue writing, where I'm highlighting right now, indicate basically the debris field that you explained to the jurors on Friday, correct?
I just want to pause there for a moment. Did you guys realize that his body was so close to the road? So it says pedestrian's final rest, which is over here, right? Pedestrian's final rest over here. His shoe is over here, right? Look how close that is to the road. It's so close that you can't even see the house in this picture. You can't see the house there or anywhere. There's no house in this picture. That's how close he is to the road. And if you accelerating in reverse to 24 miles an hour and you hit somebody, would you expect them to still be in the road? What do you think?
Yes.
And then there's a
No.
point of an arrow that comes back to a wording that says pedestrian's final rest, basically right there, correct?
Yes.
And the debris field ends right in the middle of that spotlight, correct?
Yes.
All right. So that's the
So another thing to note is, and this is really not rocket science, if you are reversing to 24 miles an hour, do you need a fairly, and I think he described how far it was. I did write it down here. Was it, how many feet was it? Anyone know offhand? "24 miles per hour, reversing 62 feet." So I'm going to convert feet to meters because I'm not sure. Feet to meters. 16 feet is almost 5 meters, right? And how wide is the road, right? Is the entirety of the road 5 meters? Trying to think. In any event, do you imagine that the vehicle is reversing from the one side of the road to the other side, or do you think the vehicle's reversing along the length of the road? I don't want to say parallel, but basically, is the vehicle reversing similar to the direction of the road? In other words, the road's going that way, it's reversing along pretty much the same direction. The point I'm trying to get at is, if the vehicle is reversing along the road and hits a pedestrian, right, then you would expect that his head would be over here. Let me make this a bit bigger. You would expect, but what I'm trying to get at is, if the vehicle is reversing along this direction, in other words, along the general direction of the road, you would expect, hitting a pedestrian, that he would be propelled head first, right? His head would probably fold towards the vehicle and then go the other way. And he would have his feet facing the road, head facing the house in a general sense, or the driveway, feet facing the road. And that's exactly what you see here. His shoe is over here and his head is over here. Now, if he was beaten up inside the house and dragged out, why not just have him, I don't know, lying, maybe his head here and his shoe over there, or his head over here and his shoe over here? It is actually the fact that his shoe is here and his head's over here is actually broadly corresponds to being struck with it from a car traveling in this direction. Does that make sense, what I've just said?
area of impact that you indicated to Mr. Lally, you believe occurred because of the debris field and the linear portion of that debris field going from the pedestrian's final rest all the way out to that final little red
It
arrow
is.
that
It is
says
a lot.
red plastic B in parentheses, correct?
Yes.
Donna, can we have exhibit 492?
Okay, next exhibit.
Okay.
Approach.
Yes.
So the points I've just made, whether you like them or not, is basically, I've never seen this before. This is a defense exhibit. Is basically, I'm saying two things. One is that the body, in terms of the positioning of the head and the feet, corresponds to someone who was struck from someone reversing at speed along the direction of the road. That's the first point. And the second point to make is, the body looks like it's really close to the road. It doesn't look like it's it doesn't look like it's 1/3 of the distance to the house, or halfway to the house, or anything like that, right? And so where does that reasoning take you? You might say, well, I don't agree with the reasoning, but if you do, where does that reasoning actually take you? Most of us do, Chelsea, most of us do. And I think if it's snowing, even more so.
while that's coming up,
So that's a
Have you ever
fire
seen this?
hydrant. And I think there's something
No, I haven't.
under it.
take a look just above the arrow. Your Honor, with the court's permission, maybe highlight or magnify the area just above the arrow.
Okay.
You see that
Yes, I do.
right underneath fire hydrant, correct?
Correct.
What does that look like to you?
Piece of plastic.
It's debris, correct?
Correct.
Can we go back with
Correct.
the court's permission to exhibit 87?
Okay.
Diagram 3. You see the fire hydrant?
Yes.
Fire hydrant's right there, correct?
Correct.
That's another.
So that is quite a good point from the defense. How could a piece of glass like that have gotten here if John O'Keefe was struck here and all of this happened? And I think one potential answer is if she struck him, wouldn't the momentum have taken the vehicle somewhat onto the sidewalk? And wouldn't she then have driven sort of partially over the sidewalk to get back into the road? When that was happening and the vehicle was sort of going like this, is that how some of the fragments could have sort of littered after her, right? But certainly at face value, it does seem a little odd. And I suppose you could say, wow, was that fragment planted there?
According to your scale, that's probably 30 feet from the pedestrian's final rest, correct?
Yeah, that's about right.
So that is the furthermost in this diagram, the furthermost piece of debris on the diagram, correct?
Correct.
So now your testimony changed that this, in fact, is the area of impact.
No,
Why not?
because it's just a piece of debris. I'm talking about the path. You follow the path of debris field. Debris can move and change.
The debris doesn't fly backward, does it?
I'm saying you pointed to like just the fire hydrant as the area impact where the debris, where that one piece of plastic was, saying that's the area impact is right next to the fire hydrant.
Are you asking me a question?
Yeah, that's what you said, right?
I'm asking you.
I'm making sure I'm understanding what you're saying so I can answer the.
I think it's possible, but I don't think it could go very far. I mean, it's an angular thing. The snow is kind of irregular, but I suppose it could travel a certain distance. I mean, it's light, it's plastic, it's almost like a sail. So potentially, but I suppose one needs to know the wind direction. So that is quite a good thought. What was the wind direction, right?
Right.
Ask the question again, Mr. Jackson.
In fact, you indicated on Friday that your analysis of the area of impact was predicated on, based on, the furthermost piece of debris from the pedestrian's body that you were aware of, which is right there. Red plastic B, correct?
I said well, I said you said earlier with the linear equation. I mean, it might have moved it over more, but it's the debris, the start of that debris, and where that is. I can't say that's definitely the point of area impact or the point of impact.
You can't.
I cannot say that is the point of impact right there. You just kind of follow the linear path because they have to follow in a direct path that way.
Okay, so now your testimony is that's not the area of impact.
I never said that was the area impact. I said it's after that.
Trooper, we were all here on Friday.
Okay.
It's exactly what you said under questioning by Mr. Lally, wasn't it?
Objection.
Sustained.
Didn't you say on Friday that you determined the area of impact for Mr. O'Keefe, the point of impact was red plastic B because that was the furthermost piece of debris you were aware of from the final point of rest from Mr. O'Keefe's body. Isn't that what you said?
I don't believe that's my exact words.
Okay, I'm not asking if it was your exact words. I don't have a transcript of it. I'm asking you, is that what you tried to impart to the jurors?
what I said to the jury. I said after that. That's the start of, that's the last point of evidence that I had. I said the area impact is probably along the roadway after that point. I mean, like before it, through after we walk towards him.
I'm sorry, I keep doing that. I think you're done. Are you done?
I am done now. Sorry.
Now you're aware that there's a piece of debris, looks like taillight material, right under the fire hydrant, correct?
Correct.
If the area impact, which you indicated on Friday, was where this red plastic B is, you would be wrong, right? Your analysis would be flawed.
No, because that's not what I said. I said it's along the roadway, and it's going to be after that point.
Okay, so is the area of impact now where the fire hydrant is?
Objection.
Ask it differently.
Are you now indicating, because now you realize that there's a piece of debris directly under the fire hydrant, are you now indicating that that's the area of impact where John O'Keefe's body was struck?
Objection.
Sustained.
Let's take a look at exhibit, with the court's permission, 279.
Okay.
Okay, next exhibit.
Taking a look at exhibit 279, I want to draw your attention to that piece right there, of plastic. You see it?
Yes.
You describe it for me. Just physically, what does that look like?
Looks like clear plastic with a little bit of red and the black on the top part.
Okay. Maybe in a triangular shape, is that fair?
Correct.
Okay. Now, if we could go back to, with the court's permission, exhibit 492,
Okay.
and highlight just above the ruler.
Looks about right.
How would you describe that piece of material?
It looks like the same piece.
Does that, based on that, does that appear to be part of the taillight material that was found at the scene?
Correct.
Okay. Now, based on that, are you now suggesting, if we could go with the court's permission, if we could go back to 587, I'll stop jumping around just a second. I think we
Okay.
just get back to 587. Oh, sorry, the diagram. Thanks. Okay. Now, seeing what you just now seen in terms of that piece of plastic that appears to be from the taillight, does that appear to be under the fire hydrant, which is highlighted? Same piece.
Yes.
Okay. Based on that.
So another thing that's interesting here is I don't really like the way this is done. I would have done a silhouette of the victim in the way that he was found on the ground. I mean, just showing that arrow, it doesn't really give you a very accurate sense. But his shoe is there, so you'd imagine you could almost draw a little stick man over here. But the interesting thing is the glass cup is found over there as well. And so that sort of, let me just bring myself up a little bit. Let me ask you a very simple question. You've got two scenarios. One is the Karen Reed hit him scenario, and the other scenario is that he went into the house and did whatever. I think I know how some of you are going to answer it, but in the scenario where he gets out the vehicle with a glass, I'm not sure what he had in it. Was it whiskey or something, or rum and something? It makes sense that he was hit when he got out the vehicle if the glass is still there, because it means he didn't actually get to the house, right? I don't know whether they tested that glass for liquid still inside it. Maybe that frozen or whatever. But think about the alternative, that he went into the house with a glass, drank something, put it down, started speaking to people, and then got attacked. Do you think everyone's going to know that he brought a glass into the house? Do you think they're going to know to put it back out there, right? I would say that is not very likely at 1 o'clock in the morning when people are sort of drunk. Are you going to notice in a party situation, someone walking into your house carrying a glass when everyone's got glasses and everyone's drinking and whatever. I'm just saying, in terms of that one little narrative, what is more likely, that someone had a glass when they got out the vehicle, or that someone was attacked somewhere else and the glass is then brought all the way there as well? What do you think?
Does that change your opinion? Is that now, the fire hydrant now, the point of impact?
No,
Where is the point of impact now?
it's along the roadway. I don't know the exact point of impact.
So you don't know the area of impact?
I said the area impact is along the roadway after the debris.
Okay.
I mean, the only thing it would change,
Well, I agree with you. I mean, I haven't followed all of this, but I find the judge quite reasonable, certainly in how she's dealt with a lot of things. Like the protesters and so on. I think she's been fairly fair. Why don't they state the reason for the objection? I think because it's quite obvious later on in the trial. It may not be obvious to us, but it's obvious to them. But I'm with you that we sometimes don't know what those reasons are. It could be things like speculation. It could be leading, things like that.
only thing it would change is maybe it's a little further away. But besides that, it's a linear field. I'm not talking about like one point. You kind of follow the middle of the debris field, and that should be the path.
Well, if the point of impact is along the roadway, where along the roadway, you can show the jurors, where along the roadway, in your expert opinion, was the point of impact?
It should be within, if you follow from pedestrians, find a rest here, just kind of follow back. That's what I'm talking about, linear field.
So now you've indicated an area, if I can follow your laser pointer, an area along here, correct?
Yes, somewhere in there.
All right,
I'm glad you're following, Teresa.
Is that, if I leave it right there, is that about where the middle of the spotlight, about where you believe the area of impact is?
It's within, I guess you can say it's within that area. I don't know definitely. There's nothing on the roadway that has a definitive point that says this is the area impact right here.
So the area of impact is where he just about steps onto the road, if not, sorry, off the road, if not is actually on the sidewalk. Now, I remember seeing someone saying, where in the history of the world has someone just stood there when a car is racing towards them? Who just stands there and then a car kind of races to them? Well, he got to the very edge of the vehicle. I don't think he expected, I'm just saying this is a potential argument. He got to the very edge of the vehicle, and who does expect someone to reverse into you when someone's driving away? Who expects, okay, I really need to be careful, is this car going to change direction or whatever? And the other side of it is he's actually out of the road by the time this happens. It's not like he's standing in the middle of the road, okay, hit me. I'm just saying that was one of the sillier arguments that I saw, which turned out not to be true. And that's another point as well.
It's within the roadway based on the evidence at the scene.
Okay. Mr. Paul, sorry, Trooper Paul, I'm asking you, based on your expert opinion and your conclusions, based on your full analysis, can you point me to within an area of 5 feet or so on the roadway where you believe the area of impact is? Is my spotlight basically highlighting the area that you believe, in your opinion, is the area of impact?
Do you have that laser pointer?
I do.
Why don't we let him show you? It'd be easier for the jury to see.
So what I'm trying to say is, so we follow the linear path.
Well, that mark is shaking
around this area. And sorry, I'm trying to keep it straight as much as I can. Follow back to here. I can't say like if this definitely is, but it's possibly based on also vehicle damage to the back of the vehicle. So if you follow all the way back to here, that could be a possible area impact.
So when you say
He
that
seems to be
area there,
pointing
I want
to-
be very clear for the record.
There, yeah.
Then what you highlighted is an area basically just
Next
to
to
the
that
left
looks like
of an
X2.
X that's on the roadway. On the bottom of diagram 3, toward the lower part of diagram 3,
It's,
correct?
you would use your circle almost to kind of be a good area around.
I'm sorry. You need to-
You can use a circle around here. This would be around the area.
Okay.
Okay.
So using your scale, that scale is going from full left to full right. It's plus or minus 40 feet, right?
Switch. Can't see it. So say again.
Joyanne,
Say
I
the
think
question.
That scale is
it's
40 feet.
very
From
close
full
to
left,
the
full
fire
right, 40
hydrant.
feet.
It's 40 feet.
it's
So
very
it's
close.
a 10-foot scale.
Okay,
It's
sorry, 20
almost
feet.
less than a foot.
Oh, okay.
As of terrible. 20 feet. Thank you. All right. So if you use that scale, can you estimate for the jurors? I'm just going to use this X as a starting point. You estimate for the jurors from this X that I've highlighted to the pedestrian's final rest. What's that number? Doesn't have to be exact. Give me an
Oh,
estimate.
that's the
So,
flagpole.
I
Final
mean, it
rest
could be
is
within
that
30 feet
arrow.
because I tell you this also on my scale, this 2 and 3 is 50 feet from each other.
Is how much?
50,
Cheap as that thing is quivering.
50.
So would you agree that
Yeah.
from this X down here to pedestrian's final rest, as the crow flies,
Bye, Jenny. Thanks for joining us.
a good 35, 40 feet.
I mean, I could try to use the scale, but it's me as a scale.
If you wouldn't mind. You need a piece of paper?
Yes, please.
With permission,
Okay.
just a blank piece of paper.
So it's quite an interesting question. How far did John O'Keefe allegedly, supposedly travel through the air after impact? And I think he's going to say something like 25 feet, right? That's 7 meters, and you might say, "Wow, that seems a bit much for the speed that he was going." But bear in mind, once the body lands on snow, there's going to be theoretically a little bit of sliding along the snow, perhaps as much as a meter. It's not going to just fly through the air and land and stop. It's probably going to fly through the air, maybe 10, say 15 feet, and then when it hits the ground, slide another almost a similar distance, maybe a third of the distance.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
he is.
You need a pen?
I got one. Thank you.
Pressure.
It's approximately 30 feet.
We're up approximately 30 feet.
30 feet, okay. I said 25. Okay, so that is exactly what I said earlier, Joyanne, that when she drove forward again over part of the sidewalk and the car kind of going like this, some broken taillight could have actually just kind of rattled off. So, yeah, I mean, I agree with that.
Yes.
Can you place, with the court's permission, can you estimate 30 feet in here?
Can I estimate?
Can you point to a place in the courtroom that looks like it's 30 feet from you?
Objection.
No. Next question.
Does the court have a diagram of a diagram of distances?
In this courtroom? No.
You indicated just now, and I'm finished with this. Thank you. Thanks. You indicated just now in answer to Mr. Lally,'s last couple of questions that in your expert opinion, when the SUV struck pedestrian John O'Keefe, he was, quote, projected forward and to the left to the front yard to his final place of rest.
Yes.
Yanetti's making some funny
Expert
faces there.
testimony is that John O'Keefe was hit with the SUV and flew 30 feet.
Projected mean like I don't say he flew all the way there. He was projected in that way. He got
So look at Karen Reed's face here. She was kind of doing this a moment ago. Now, I wonder what she does when Lally's questioning someone. Do you think she looks back towards him, or do you think she kind of looks bored?
pushed forward in that direction.
Which, if he was rendered incapacitated, landed there, he'd have to sort of fly there, correct? He didn't walk there.
I mean, would you definitely flying like literally off the ground the whole entire time, or?
Well, you tell me. You're the expert.
I mean, when we say projected, we mean he gets projected, and they usually have a landing phase, and they land, and then they either roll or tumble to final rest.
Okay. How far do you
Landing
think he landed?
phase. No,
How far was it until he landed of that 30 feet?
I don't know. There's no indication of where his exact landing spot was.
Was there any evidence whatsoever that he landed and rolled?
And there was no evidence that he landed or rolled. Rolled.
According to you, the evidence that you have in front of you is that you get hit, fly 30 feet, land where he ended up in his final rest, right?
Objection.
Well, I think you could have evidence of that, which is where the clothing could get slightly ripped or even the belt becomes slightly dislodged. In other words, if you land quite hard, it might have some kind of impact on the clothing. I'm just trying to think more than that. Could you sort of land on some of those fragments?
Sustained. Ask it differently.
Based on your expert opinion, you believe that.
So, Joe, I don't think that's true. I mean, I've actually seen. See if I can actually find it. I've seen footage of the clothing, and the belt is in the jeans. Let's see if I can find it for you. That's just another thing that has been said, but it's not actually true. I'm just trying to see if I can. Jeans. Yeah, I can't actually. I'm trying to just find the link quickly so I can show you guys. Well, let's just continue playing while I look for it.
To his final rest place.
That's not what I was saying.
But you said there's no evidence that he rolled.
And there's no evidence that he flew through the air either.
Exactly. Right? Exactly.
Objection.
Sustained.
You said on Friday that in your experience, people tend to lose objects that are not strapped to them. Is that right?
Yes.
In other words, get hit by something, car, truck, bus, whatever, train, and if you have something in your hand, boom, you lose it, you drop it. If it's not strapped to you, correct?
Correct.
How do you suppose that Mr. O'Keefe, in your opinion, held on to that glass cup that was found right next to him?
Okay, so I have found this. It's not really what I want, but you can see some of the items of clothing that looks like the hoodie he was wearing. And there's another version of the hoodie. I'm just trying to find those jeans.
Next to him, over the course of
I have seen them.
Objection.
I'll allow it. Do you have a theory on that?
I don't know. I mean, it just could have been with him the whole way. I don't know. I wasn't there, so I don't know how the glass stayed with his body and went with him to the final rest.
So I mean, it's just common sense. You have to believe it. It was in his hand. He held on to it the entire time it was being projected.
Oh, yeah, it is.
It's possibly, it could have been in his hand. It could have been tucked next to his clothing. Did
you say tucked into?
I mean, like, could.
Okay, here it is. Here it is. So if you look at this image, there you can see the belt, right? Now, I've got to say, Joe says he's been watching this trial all along. I haven't. I haven't. Like I said, I've just been following it on Twitter, and I do remember seeing this. And so it's easy to be kind of misled by some of the chatter around the case. Well, yeah, you have it. There's the belt still in the genes. So I do think that is Twitter disinformation. There you have it in black and white. There is someone says, Joe's lucky brand genes complete with a belt that was thought to be missing. Well, guess what? It wasn't missing. And so, this is a really good example where you put the misinformation out there, people get really riled up. They're like, wow, that is definitely really compelling. And by the time the truth comes out, it's gone around the world so many times, it's like that's become the new truth, but except it's just not true, right? This is just one example of that. There's more than one.
Had been next to his body, so when he projected, made the glass was with his body as it was also flying.
Thanks,
so
Joe.
There's a number of reasons why the glass, because it also got projected with the body while he was holding it.
I thought you said on Friday, and you just agreed with me, that people drop things and they're hit.
Yes.
Well, you've got to be careful making like it absolute, because in Stephen Smith's case, and by the way, I actually went to that accident scene and I stood there, and the square in the road is still there. I was right there. I was there in the dark, right? And I've extensively covered that case, the clothing, the body in the road, the injuries, and so on. And I believe that I correctly analyzed that case. There was a second investigation. I think his body was exhumed, and what did they decide? That it did seem to conform to a accident. That's ultimately where that investigation went. And in that case, his shoes, he still had his shoes on. If I remember correctly, he still had his shoes on.
His body, not everything it tends to fly off. I mean, some stuff flies off, some stuff will stay on.
I see.
It's not uncommon to find piece of clothing and stuff, that you find at the scene.
Piece of clothing?
Like clothing, like shoes, like shoes and stuff like that to come off the body during a pedestrian crash.
Well, that's not what I asked.
I know, I'm just saying, you asked me, you said what I'm just responding to what you said and trying to make sure you understand what I'm saying.
No, I don't, but I'll ask another question. Shoes are strapped on by definition, right?
Yes, but it's very common for shoes to come off.
How about a cell phone?
Cell phone? Yeah. Yeah, it depends. Depends on where it is.
It was under his body.
Okay.
How do you account for that? He held onto a cell phone with one hand and held onto the cup with the other.
Objection.
So let me jump in there. How would you account for, in a scenario like this, that his cell phone is under his body? How would you explain it? Would you say, well, there's only one explanation, this is foul play, there's no possible explanation? I think he means by strapped on, that the shoelaces were tied. Are you guys following? How would you account for a cell phone being under someone's body where they were potentially struck in this way? Let's see how good your critical thinking is. That's how I understand that. It's like obvious. Some people keep their cell phones in their pockets, and so why would it be under you? Because it was under you to begin with. I also felt the same way, Jane. I feel the same way. Okay, let's continue.
Sustained. Ask it differently.
If a cell phone was found under his torso, under his body, what's your theory on how that cell phone ended up flying 30 feet?
It just did.
Just did. And somehow, as he landed, tucked that cell phone underneath his body, so he landed on top of it.
It just did. That's the evidence at the scene.
So if you think about it, if you got your cell phone in a pocket and you struck very hard, right? And the body is now moving, right? The cell phone is like kind of a heavy thing and it's in a pocket and the pocket is kind of accelerating, right? So is the cell phone going to like just pop out? Obviously, if you struck the cell phone, let's say with a golf club or something, while it is in a pocket, it would pop out of the pocket. But if the body is accelerating and the pocket obviously as well, you can imagine the cell phone is actually almost being pinched inwards because of the clothing that's accelerating around it. So it's not going to pop out. It would want to pop out when the body stops and the momentum of the cell phone now wants to continue going, except the bodies now and the ground are going to kind of trap it where it's supposed to be. Does that make sense?
And I didn't put the evidence there. So
Well, you didn't.
Objection.
All right, so
Jeanne,
jurors, I've told
trust
you
your
before, lawyers cannot
instinct.
make comments, so disregard it. Mr. Jackson, don't do it
I
again.
understand. So in
You
one hand-
understand, but don't do it. Your answer is always, I understand. Don't do it.
Yes, you are. Cell phone in one hand, cup in the other hand, flew through the air, right?
Objection.
So there the judge does a little bit of has chastised the lawyer. Do you think that was deserved?
Sustained.
Do you think
were
Jackson
informed
deserved that?
of this incident on January 29th, 2022 at about 2:30 in the afternoon. Is that right?
yes,
At the time, you were working out of the CARS facility, which is located on West Grove Street in Middleborough. Is that right?
yes,
By the way, that's a facility that has multiple garages. Sally ports, I don't know if they're called Sally ports, but garage bays, correct?
the mechanic shop are there.
The mechanic shop
Yes,
is, if you're going to review, for instance, for purposes of reconstruction, if you're going to review a vehicle, is the vehicle placed in those mechanics bays?
no, not there. That's for state police vehicles.
Okay, so where are the mechanics bays? Sorry, reverse that. Where are the Sally ports where you would do your analysis, your reconstruction, your review of the vehicle, inspections, things of that nature?
We don't have Sally ports for that.
You don't have anything dedicated to that?
No, the only time we would use a Sally port is the crime scene would have some Sally ports that they would do to document their crime scene stuff. And I've gone there to do my inspections, but most of our inspections are done either at the tow yard or some type of facility for that.
Ultimately, was this SUV ever taken to the Middleborough?
So I must say I'm a little bit underwhelmed. Like I heard someone saying I've never seen a witness being torn apart like this. I don't get that sense. He's certainly not the best witness I've ever seen, but that seems to me quite an exaggeration. Or aren't we there yet? Joe, is the torn apart part still coming, or what? Like I don't know. Like I'm a little bit underwhelmed by. He's certainly not the best witness I've ever seen, but equally is not the worst.
Yes, it was.
Where was it placed?
There's a fenced-in area inside it's a fenced-in area.
Is it outside or inside?
Hey, Valerie,
Outside.
good to see
Did
you.
it remain outside in that fenced-in area the whole time?
I don't know the exact time. It was there for a while, then it got moved.
Where did it get moved to?
I'm not sure exactly where they moved it immediately after it left Middleborough.
Are you familiar with the Foxborough location?
Yes.
Does that have Sally ports or bays for inspection and evaluation?
It has garages in it, but we wouldn't use them. We don't normally use those garages for inspections.
Is it possible to use those garages for inspections?
It is possible.
Okay. It's happened before, correct?
I've not used the inspection in the garages.
But it's,
I'm going to ask you to keep your voice up and
Sorry,
speak
yes.
slowly.
but you know that it could be used.
Sorry.
So, do you think this witness is part of the conspiracy? Does he seem to be lying? And do you think he's making statements that just seem like he's got an agenda? Does he seem to be stretching reality beyond breaking point?
Sorry, you know that those bays could be used for inspections or analysis or evaluation if needed, correct?
Yes.
All right. Given the fact that the SUV that was being seized on January 29th was being seized as potential evidence, best practices would suggest that you'd want to get it in and out of the bad weather, the inclement weather, as quickly as possible, correct? You wouldn't want to subject it to continued forces from nature like rain, wind, snow, sleet, hail, right?
That would be beneficial, yes.
All right. You're aware that the Foxborough location and the Middleborough location with the mechanics bays are all closer to Dighton than Canton, right?
Both Foxborough and
Foxborough and Middleborough are both closer to Dighton than Canton. In other words, you have to pass by, depending on which way you go, pass by Middleborough, pass by Foxborough to get to Canton.
so from where?
From Dighton, sorry.
So from Dighton.
Where the vehicle was seized in
Yeah.
Dighton, all going toward Canton, you pass by either Middleborough or Foxborough to get to Canton, correct?
I don't believe you'd pass by Middleborough to get to Canton, but you've passed by Foxborough.
All right. The car was not taken to Foxborough, was it?
No.
As a matter of fact, the car was taken basically double the distance all the way to Canton to that Sally Port, correct?
Objection.
Do you know that? Is that double the distance?
I don't know the exact distance. I know it was in Canton.
And you know it's far to Canton,
From Dighton, yes.
right? And you're also aware that because you've been to the scene, assuming, correct? The 34 Fairview.
Yes. Yes, I have.
And you've been to Canton, PD.
Yes, I have.
You know that those two locations are about 3-4 minutes apart.
Yeah, I can say that.
He seems to have calmed down a little. He was definitely quite flustered earlier, but he seems a little more settled now.
When you started
Come, boy.
let me ask this in a little bit different way. Before you began any review on this case, any physical review on this case or analysis on the case, you were told that there had been a crash, correct?
Yes.
You testified to that at the state court grand jury in this matter. Is that right? That you've been told in advance this was a vehicle pedestrian crash and you were asked to analyze it, right?
Yes.
You wrote in your report that it was a single vehicle collision involving a pedestrian and you were, quote, assigned to reconstruct that collision, correct?
Yes.
So when you began your analysis, Trooper Paul, you were told conclusively by the lead investigator, Michael Proctor, that the deceased was hit by a car and your job was to reconstruct it. Is that right?
Objection.
Okay, so there are lots of parts to that. Break it down.
Sure. Were you
Break it
told by
down,
Michael
break it down.
Proctor to reconstruct this incident?
Objection.
So were you told that by Trooper Proctor?
I was not.
Okay, next question.
Sure. Who were you given your instructions by
Instructions for what?
to reconstruct this incident?
I wasn't given instructions to reconstruct it. It's just I was assigned to it.
Right.
That was requested. My assistance was requested to reconstruct it.
That's my question. Who assigned you to it?
I talked to my sergeant at the time who gave me the phone call.
And you were told some basics about that reconstruction, the event that you were asked to reconstruct, correct?
Yes.
The information that you were told came from the case officer. Is that right?
Who's the case officer?
The information that this was a pedestrian vehicle incident, as opposed to motor vehicle incident, pedestrian bicycle, motor vehicle motorcycle. You were told it was a motor vehicle pedestrian incident that you were asked to reconstruct, correct?
Yeah, I was told that, yes.
All right, and you had to be given some basic parameters of what that incident, how that incident occurred. The car was going in reverse, it's got a damaged taillight, things like that.
Some basic stuff, yeah.
What I'm asking is, I'm trying to get to is, who gave you that information? Where'd it come from?
That the car was traveling in reverse. Like, which part of the information? You asked me several different things just now.
Were you given information from multiple sources? Or did someone give you a summary of what you were being asked to do? At the very beginning,
Yep.
who gave you the summary?
Summary of the whole entire, of what?
Of the event that you were asked to reconstruct?
I was passed down when I got to the garage. That there was nobody that sat there and gave me the summary, like, that I can remember. I was told that it was a pedestrian crash. I knew it was a Boston police officer involved, that this was the vehicle, and that it was traveling in reverse. That's all they had.
Okay. What I'm asking is, that's great. Thank you for the summary. Who gave you that summary?
So another thing just to note, her vehicle traveling at 24 miles per hour in the snow, just that on its own, let's say you take all the information in this case and throw it out the window. The fact that her vehicle was traveling, and I think this is common cause, at 24 miles per hour in reverse, isn't that significant? You could hit somebody, right? Chelsea says, does he have a sweater on? You're not going to believe this. He keeps taking it off. He seems to be like, this doesn't like things on him. He does have a sweater, but I'm not going to put him under my sweatshirt, that's for sure. But just think about that, like thin slicing it to that point. You say someone died next to a road, or their body was found next to a road, blah, 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 blah. Okay, we know that a vehicle driven by his girlfriend reversed at 24 miles per hour. Is it connected? Whoever reverses at 24 miles per hour, let alone in snow? Why would you need to reverse 24 miles per hour when you're making a turn? Wouldn't you just need to go like 4 or 5 foot and slowly to complete your turn?
I don't know if it was definitely anybody from the get-go that was like I talked to.
From where?
I don't know if it's anybody that I could definitely say that was the person. There was multiple people going around when I got there.
I believe there are heat waves in America.
I think I
right
talked
now.
to Trooper Zach Clark. He was doing the crime scene. I think he was Zach Clark. He was the crime scene photos at the time. I knew him from past crashes. He just said this is the vehicle, and I think he kind of gave me a little bit of a lowdown on what the vehicle was.
Okay.
So
My question is this: when you got that, did you call it a lowdown? He gave you the lowdown?
he gave me information. Yes.
Right. When you got the lowdown, you were told Boston police officer was involved, the vehicle pedestrian incident, car was going in reverse, and ultimately led to the death of the pedestrian. Struck the pedestrian in reverse, correct?
Correct.
All right. And you were assigned specifically to try to reconstruct that incident.
Yes.
Have you ever heard of the phrase confirmation bias?
I know the phrase. Yes.
You know what it means?
I can't definitely say what it means.
Developing an
He doesn't know what confirmation bias means. Can you just define what confirmation bias is? Well, in this case, if he's been told that it's a pedestrian type incident, then you could imagine that everything he's investigating is going to support that assessment. He's going to have confirmation bias in terms of this idea that a pedestrian was hit.
a conclusion and then trying to find evidence to fit that conclusion. Does that sound right?
If you say so.
noted in your direct examination that there were scratches on the passenger side rear bumper of the Lexus, correct?
Yes.
How exactly were you able to scientifically determine that any of those scratches were
Were
from
made
the incident
that
on
night.
January 29th, 2022, as opposed to any other time?
I didn't have anything else on the time. It said that those scratches happened prior to this collision.
I'm sorry.
I didn't have any information
Thanks,
that those
Chelsea.
scratches
Is your
were caused from
official
a prior
definition.
collision. And so when I looked at the evidence, I knew it was in that same area, the right rear tail light. So when I looked at it, it didn't quite fit the pedestrian thing. So when you showed me the video, or I saw the video like a year ago on Court TV, I said that could be.
You asked the question, so next,
I
keep
did.
He saw it on Court TV. Well, now he's on Court TV.
going.
Not responsive.
He's answering. Next
trying to-
question. Then
You guys
go
had
ahead.
scientifically
Hold on.
thought the scratches were.
Hold on. Ask
Sorry.
a question, Mr. Jackson.
You know what?
Can I make a comment here? I remember hiring a car and bringing it back and then being appalled that there was a biggish scratch on it. And I was like, there's no way that was me. But I thought I was going to be in quite serious trouble. When I say biggest scratch, maybe like that sort of size. I think it was queried. I think they were like, wow, there's something here. And I think I photographed it. And I think the point I made was you can already see rust in the crack. I mean, I don't think I had the car more than 3 days. But I certainly never noticed the scratch. And so I pointed out that there's rust in that scratch. And so it couldn't have been made while I had it. And I think they accepted it and I was not fined or whatever. But you can sometimes tell, just like the scratches on a person's arm, if they are like a dark black color or if they're red color, you can kind of tell that they freshly made. In the same way, sometimes a scratch on a vehicle will have a little like fine, almost like curl marks, almost like if you cut into wood, it leaves like a fine little trail where the paint or the metal has sort of been uplifted, right? Whereas if the scratch is much older, and the same applies to on plastic for that matter, when it's a lot older, the edging to those scratches can sometimes be, to some extent, I don't want to say sandpapered away, but reduced by basically just wear and tear, by wind and sun and weather. And so I don't think it's impossible to tell whether, I don't think it's like you can't tell whether scratch is new or old. I think if you detail oriented, if you photograph it closely enough, you can actually tell whether it's fairly recent. Am I making sense?
What normal wear and tear on a vehicle is, right?
Yes.
Bumpers get scratched.
Oh, that's
Rear units,
interesting.
Correct?
Correct.
Get scratched in a grocery store parking lot, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
Shopping cart.
I agree with you.
Bounce off the back of the car and scratch the bumper, scratch the side of the car, quarter panel or something, right?
Sure.
I mean, I don't want to go through it, but there's thousands and thousands and thousands of ways that a car can get a scratch, correct?
Correct.
My question is, as you sit here, do you have any scientific evidence that those scratches occurred on January 29th at approximately 12:45 a.m.?
What do you mean by scientific evidence?
Well, do you have any evidence whatsoever that you can point to that those scratches occurred on that date and at that time rather than any other time in the history of that vehicle?
Like I said earlier, the video seems to appear that's what it looks like that could have been from.
Well, you said on Friday
So scientific evidence could be that wasn't a hair found on the rear bumper? I would say that's pretty strong scientific evidence of exactly that. Do you guys agree?
Let's talk about those scratches for a second. Because
Yeah.
when you testified Friday, you were pretty clear. You said that
Let's kind of be sensible for a moment. Are we dealing with a situation where Karen Reed's car has absolutely no damage to the back of it? There's not a single scratch. The taillight isn't damaged either. And someone is saying, oh, no, she struck John O'Keefe. In other words, there's absolutely no evidence that that happened. No. We're dealing with a damaged taillight debris at the scene. His hair on the rear bumper, and I seem to remember there were also, am I right about this? Fibers from his clothing also on the rear bumper, or is it the other way around? Glass fragments or plastic fragments in his clothing? Is it one or the other or both? I'm not quite sure. But think about it. It would be far more damning to the state's case if there was absolutely no damage whatsoever, no scratches, no damage to the taillight, to the rear of a vehicle. And I've got a vehicle that has zero damage whatsoever, no scratch, no nothing broken at all. So someone accused me of rear-ending someone, I would say, well, there's absolutely no damage to my vehicle. So what's going on there? But if you do have damage, and quite significant damage, what is that suggesting? It's not suggesting nothing. And I think one of the big whoppers of this case is, yes, I did damage my car, just damaged it somewhere else. But of course, what about the evidence being there? What about glass fragments being there? Oh, no, they were picked up. It just becomes a greater and greater conspiracy, doesn't it?
if I can find it exactly.
Isn't it? Definitely not good. Okay, guys, we're at 2.5 hours. I'm kind of thinking that we don't really need to go on much further. What do you guys say?
You said, quote, the dent and scratches for his hand could be, those are consistent with striking the Lexus. Remember saying that?
Yes, on the tailgate.
Okay, so the dent and scratches.
I wonder what we're dealing with
talked about
here.
Friday, arrow indicates.
So look at this PCS operator, accelerator pedal opening angle in medium higher after shifting to right. This looks to me like the telematics. Pretty interesting. But I'm not going to really deal with that. I need to get some dinner. I think Timmy also needs to get some food. Thanks a lot for being here, guys. I might do Van Gogh letters tomorrow. That's Tuesday. And I don't think I'm going to do Karen Reed again for a couple of days. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. Thanks a lot, guys, for joining me. Thanks a lot for being here. Thanks for your comments. And please watch that video I did on Rex Huerman. The next one that I'm going to work on is probably John Benet Ramsey. 5 more whoppers from John Ramsey. I'm going to be doing that after I've gotten dinner. Just trying to get my channel up to the sort of numbers that I think it needs to be at. So thanks a lot for being here. Chelsea, thanks for manning the fort. Pretty decent chat for, I know there's a lot of people with strong opinions either way. Thanks a lot for being civil either way, whatever your position. Yeah, thanks a lot for being here, guys. Timmy, well, you're going to have to get up anyway, Timmy. So Timmy says, hey, guys, I actually took him for a walk just before coming live. I was gonna just sort of walk him to the gate, but ended up taking him for a decent walk at the end of the day. I might just put that jacket on him again, but he tends to throw it off after about half an hour anyway. But it has been a very cold, miserable, overcast day and night now as well. So anyway, guys, thanks a lot for being here. Timmy says goodbye. Bye. As I say, look out for Van Gogh letters. We've actually got a lot to catch up on. So around about the same time tomorrow. Okay, see you guys then. Bye.